So, since we're talking about Japanese games, one of the things that I think we've talked about for a while is like what drew us to Japanese gaming, and I think that would be a good kind of thing to bring up on our inaugural episode because, I mean, I see myself as like a dilettante compared to you. You have got some like deep roots in Japanese gaming and culture, and but I want to know like what brought you down that path back in the day.
Um, well, if I can, it was, I would say it was a steady buildup for sure. I remember I made my YouTube channel back in 2000. I would say I'm gonna say 2010, maybe 2011. It was about that time, and at the time, I was still playing a lot of mainstream games. Games like what are your Battlefields. I was playing games like Call of Duty and all that stuff, and I just got to this weird conclusion that I wasn't really having fun with these games. I was mostly playing them because I mean it was in the zeitgeist of just popular AAA titles. That's why I was playing them. And I think when things started turning around and I started importing and started paying attention to more, um, I would say I would call them. I guess the proper word is like zany is probably the kooky games. Is when I discovered what was that game called? Shadows of the Damned. I came across Shadows of the Damned and I came across Lollipop Chainsaw and all that stuff, and I was like, who is making these games? And it was Suda51. He made No More Heroes, Killer is Dead, and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, it's a Japanese developer. And then I would say I kind of fell down a weird rabbit hole because of Suda51. So I was like, I wonder if there's like more zany, kooky Japanese games I can buy that's insane. And I think the next game that I bought that was crazy anime stuff was a game called Onichambara. I bought that. It's like bikini girls hack and slash killing zombies, but they kill zombies in their bikinis. And once I played that, I just kept buying more weird things. Like I don't know why. I just fell down this weird rabbit hole of buying weird Japanese games. And years went by and I guess somewhere along the lines my channel kind of shifted and it turned like I became like this weird Japanese anime video game aficionado that everyone has dubbed me. So that like whenever they like a lot of subscribers that will comment on my videos, they'll say, "Oh my God, I've never heard of this. I need to go buy it." Or, "Oh my God, like what is this weird game that you're playing that has girls, shooting each other with like water guns or something like that?" I always I grew into this knack of discovering weird, obscure anime games, and that actually threw me down more rabbit holes of maybe I should look at the older stuff. And I started looking at PC Engine and PC 88s and all of that stuff. And a lot of the things that I found, I found from you telling stories about some of the games that you've played and what you were searching on. And I fell down more rabbit holes. I just have this weird habit of falling down rabbit holes. That was the problem.
Well, I mean that's the best part of being a collector is to kind of go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And I've been down some deep ones in my life. But it's funny. So you brought up the Lollipop Chainsaw game.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
saw that on the shelves forever in kind of like whenever that came out, 2011,
Two,
2012, something like that.
2012, yeah, it's about that.
And I would see it at GameStop, and it was cheaper, back in the old used section, and I never picked it up, and now I'm kind of regretting it. I still don't know what it's about. I mean, was it like a hack and slash or what?
So Suda 51 has this weird he has this weird knack for wanting to create arcade-like games. So think of a hack and slash with an arcade aesthetic. The more combos you build, the more score you build, and all this stuff. But it's a short game. It's very fun though.
Uh,
It's a very good game.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, I can't believe I.
$73? Why?
How much is it?
$73.
Yeah, should have bought it when it was $20. But you know, I'm one of those guys. I hate the GameStop used stickers.
Yeah, I'm the same.
So that always I really would have to be in one of those modes where like I must play this game now to buy it. And the Lollipop Chainsaw never got me in that mood. So now I have to pay $73.
How'd you get into Japanese games? What was your
What?
rabbit hole?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, for me, I sort of, and I'll take it back to my very earliest days playing video games. I got my Nintendo Entertainment System. I was all about it. You know, I was addicted to it. And I remember my father coming into the room and he kind of looked at me and he's like, you know, that thing that you love, that's not American. That's made in Japan. And the Japanese, like they're, you know, this was like whatever it was, 89, 90. This was before the Japanese era of stagnation came in. And he's like, you know, they're really leading the world in everything. They're the top country when it comes to technology. And, you know, I'm glad you like your Nintendo because one day you're going to be working for the Japanese.
Mm.
And I was kind of like, oh, cool. So this thing that I love is not American? That's awesome. And so I always had this in my mind that this hobby that I had was not an American hobby. And then I got my subscription to EGM magazine. So I'm dating myself, obviously, at this point. But EGM magazine, much like a lot of the Game Pro and Die Hard Game Fan, they would have like international outlook. And so you could always see like, oh, Japan is the place where the games come out first. And then we could always hope to get them. So Japan was like this place of origin for the hobby. And I always thought, wouldn't it be cool if one day I could go there or buy games from Japan? And of course, in those magazines, you would have the section in the back with like the import gaming stores, and you could get a system from them before it would release in the States, but it was absolutely super expensive.
Yeah,
I don't know if you, you know,
I
remember
do.
those. And
I remember that very vividly.
yeah, so it was like this object of desire, like, oh my God, can I ever import? And then you kind of fast forward, at least for me, I would say 2008, around that point, I started to, I was actually in grad school, and my mind was not in, you know, at least during the week, in Japanese culture, Japanese gaming, and I was just kind of getting tired of the grind. And I said, you know, I want to focus on something completely different on the weekends, and that's when I got into mahjong, Japanese mahjong.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know, and I learned how to play that, and I started importing those games, and started importing some other games like I forget what it was called, the King of Colosseum wrestling games for the PlayStation 2. I was a big pro wrestling fan, and I knew Japan had the best wrestling games. Virtua was it
Fire Pro.
Fire Pro, Virtua Pro Wrestling 2 for the N64, which was like the greatest version of those WCW AccuWare or
Hmm.
AccuCorp fighters or wrestlers on the N64. So you know, I got into that, and then slowly but surely, I just started constantly importing, and I got into the Saturn. And I think what does it for me, still to this day, is Japanese gaming and I think culture in general. It's recognizable from like a Western standpoint, but it is incredibly unique still. Like no one else is doing those types of games, or you know, when you think about anime, like it's very distinctive. So I always find, of course, my channel's name is Game Escape. I always find it a nice escape from kind of the American or European status quo when it comes to entertainment.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I think those rabbit holes were metaphorically some sort of escape to get away from the Call of Duties, to get away from the battlefields and all those games. I just got tired of seeing the same games over and over and over. Now, I mean, you did see some gems here and there, but they weren't gems like, like let's say what was another game that I was playing then? Um like a creative game that I can remember from my childhood is Jet Grind Radio. That's like the first thing that pops into my head. I was always a fan of that game growing up. And I think as I got older and I was seeing the same games produced, I wanted to go back to that era of creativity. And a lot of Japanese games did that for me, where I would just, like I said, I would buy like weird, zany anime import games because I just needed to get away from the the monsoon of just mainstream games that was coming out here.
Well, yeah, and it's funny, you're talking about that era, and I always felt like the Call of Duties and the Battlefields, that was kind of like the gray brown, low frame rate shooters of the PS3 and Xbox 360. And at least for me, like I think it was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, it was like that first new game in that era. Like that was
Mhm.
cool. I like that game. I played the heck out of that. I enjoyed it. I played it online, but I couldn't play that type of game constantly. I didn't always need to be, in a ground invasion of some nondescript country. Um, so yeah, I could totally see where you're coming from because I was getting bored with that stuff as well.
Yeah. Like there were, to be completely honest, now there were some outliers that were really, really good. Like at that time, I remember one game that you can say was, oh, it's just a first-person shooter, exactly like Call of Duty. But there was a joy into this game, which was Far Cry 3. I did find it fun, jumping off of cliffs, landing in safely into like a river of water, and that stuff was cool. It always felt like a build your own adventure kind of thing. Um, I did enjoy games like that, or games like Prototype, which was kind of like running up buildings and such. But I don't know what it was that I just kind of got tired.
And I think the great thing about Japanese gaming is, if you add at least, we'll talk about it today, if you add in the Switch library, the PS4 library, and then you kind of look at stuff like the PC Engine, the Sega Saturn, you will never run out of new experiences. So if you're out there and you're tired of your Maddens and FIFAs and stuff like that, pick a rabbit hole and you'll never come out of it.
Very, very true. Except some of those rabbit holes can be very expensive.